Hi, good afternoon to one and all. Respected chairperson, co-chair, moderators, colleagues, friends, and dear students. I should thank Dr. Santosh Unava, my mentor, for this opportunity of joining iShala, which has been happening for many, many years. And I think this is the best part of AIOS that I like, spending, few minutes with the postgraduate students. So I'm going to take you through Ocular Oncology X Files. I know it's a retina session, but we are slightly going to shift to the entire spectrum of ocular oncology, probably, covering from the conjunctiva, the eyelid, and the orbit. I'm sure the retina specialist may find it a little bit offset from their presentation, which was there before. So bear with me. So whenever we talk about ocular oncology, and this is basically aiming the postgraduate students over here, ocular tumors are nothing different than any other tumors of the body. So right from our undergraduate, time, we have been taught how to differentiate a benign tumor from a malignant tumor. And you have to start it right from the history, the presentation, the symptoms, and the signs. It's just not going and looking at the lesion and then trying to recognize and reach a diagnosis. So we all know that onset of presentation, whenever you want to differentiate between a benign tumor, any part of the body, any part of the eye. So the onset really matters. If it's something which is very long duration, which has been there as a childhood lesion, probably it is benign. It's not a malignant lesion, or something which is very rapidly growing. Within a week, it is definitely not a neoplasia. Even it could be an inflammatory lesion or an infective lesion. So you have to always see whether it's a slow progression or a rapid progression. Family history really matters, because there are many ocular tumors which has got a strong genetic predisposition. The previous speaker already touched upon the genetic association of retinoblastoma. It's not only retinoblastoma, there are many ocular tumors which has a very strong genetic predisposition. So history, starting from the history, it is very important to take leading questions from the patient as well. Symptoms, of course, whether it's associated with pain. Usually neoplasia is not associated with pain until and unless it's a large lesion which has undergone a necrosis or compressing vital structures around, especially the nerves. Like, for example, in the lacrimal gland adenocystic carcinoma, we've all learned that there will be abnormal sensation over the forehead and the supply of the area of trigeminal nerve. So these things have to be asked for. Bleeding, if it is large and if there is ulceration, the patient can complain of bleeding even in malignant lesions. Change in color, size, and thickness is something that you have to always ask if a patient comes with a lesion, be it on the eyelid, be it on the ocular surface. And of course, visual symptoms, in order to know whether there is any compressive effect of the lesion over the nerve, or even, something which is growing over the cornea or intraocular. Signs, as in any other tumor, you have to first look at the location. You have to, in fact, write in your paper when you have given a small case, a short case of ocular tumors, the location, the size. You probably should have to measure it. Look at the color, because most of the lesions, be it any part of the eye, we usually come to a conclusion depending upon the color. It could be a melanotic lesion, it could be a non-pigmented, pigmented lesion, it could be a red lesion, a black lesion, a brown lesion. So color is very important, especially in eyelids and ocular surface and intraocular tumors. Thickness, vascularity. Now, vascularity and feeder vessels in the signs are very important, because this usually indicates that it is a malignant neoplasia. Consistency, of course, whether it is soft, cystic, or firm to hard in consistency. Firm to hard, usually, as we have always studied, that it indicates a malignant lesion. And the surrounding tissue has to be examined, because we all know malignant lesions are invasive. Benign lesions are usually not invasive. So anything which is invading into the surrounding tissue has high propensity of being a malignant lesion. And these are basically from the history, the symptoms, and the signs. Now we'll just go into tumors, not too much in depth. I'll just take you through few important cases. Eyelid tumors, there are, a spectrum of eyelid tumors. I definitely cannot cover, everything in 15 minutes. So it's just X files, important cases here. Depending upon, the layer from which it arises, it is again classified into tumors of the epidermis. It could be from the sebaceous gland, it could be from the sweat glands, it could be neural tumors or any other part of the eyelid. So this is a very typical presentation, and I'm sure you might have come across in most of your colleges, in your clinic and OPDs, a 70-year-old lady with a lower eyelid mass, which has been growing for the past 8 months. So you have to see her age. She's an old lady, and she has undergone incision and curettage for a chalazion multiple times, but she has been having multiple recurrence. So, well, of course, when a chalazion is, an incision and curettage is done in chalazion, and if it recurs, definitely it is not a chalazion. So, this is a very typical presentation of an eyelid tumor, sebaceous gland carcinoma. So, what are the things that you really need to look into is to differentiate it from a benign inflammatory lesions, something like a chalazion, which is very, very common, especially in an older patient. You have to be very cautious. Now, these tumors present as nodular mass. It usually involves the lid margin. Since it's arising from the sebaceous gland, it is very characteristic that these lesions will present with loss of lashes. So any lesion, an eyelid, a nevi, or any other cystic lesion, the entire anterior lid margin and the posterior lid margin will be intact. But whenever it's a malignancy, and especially sebaceous gland carcinoma, there will be loss of lashes, there will be rounding of the posterior lid margin, loss of mebumin gland architecture. The tarsus is usually involved because it's a mebumin glands which is situated there, vascularity and feeder vessel. Yet another tumor is the basal cell carcinoma, which is again one of the common eyelid tumors. This is more of an eroding tumor. They can have pigmentation. So it actually eats up the tissue, the entire tissue. In fact, this is an anterior lamellar tumor. So this is the extent of the tissue, and we always have learned basal cell carcinoma to be a rodent ulcer. It presents as an ulceration. It just erodes into the medial camtyl. There are different forms of basal cell carcinoma, which you need to know generally: superficial, nodular, micronodular, and various other things. And management is definitely surgical. We'll come to that later. So coming on to the spectrum of eyelid tumors, what you need to do as a student whenever you get a short case, I don't think it would be a long case for you. It's mostly a short case. So first and foremost, you need to identify the features, look for all the features of malignant lesion, inflammatory lesion as well, put down everything, and then give a provisional diagnosis, whether it's a benign eyelid tumor or a malignant eyelid tumor. And if it is a benign, you might have to say whether it is something like this, which is a papilloma. It could be cystic. This is a nevus. It's a seborrheic keratitis over here, keratosis over here. It is a cystic lesion. And something which is very, very invasive and large usually points out to a malignant lesion. This is in fact a child presenting with this reddish lesion. So color always matters. This is a capillary hemangioma over here, but this reddish lesion in an adult is a Merkel cell carcinoma. So these things have to be kept in mind depending upon the color, depending upon the location, and the size of the tumor. Now, you just need to know a few things, which is very important. Malignant eyelid tumors are sebaceous gland carcinoma, which is the most common in India, followed by squamous cell carcinoma, basal cell carcinoma. Others are rare, which is Merkel cell carcinoma, malignant melanoma, and adenocarcinoma, which can arise from the sweat glands. You should also know that the lethal eyelid tumors, according to the lethality in chronological order, it's Merkel cell carcinoma, which is first, followed by malignant melanoma and sebaceous gland carcinoma. Merkel cell carcinoma and malignant melanoma has a high propensity for regional metastasis as well as systemic metastasis with high mortality if not managed appropriately. So apart from, talking about the color, the lesion, the layer which is involved, first and foremost, how we diagnose in an eyelid tumor is which lamellae is involved. If it's the anterior lamellae, it's mostly the squamous cell carcinoma, the basal cell carcinoma, and the melanoma, as you can see here. And if it's a posterior lamella which is involved, it is a sebaceous gland carcinoma. So look at the tarsus. always flip the eyelid. Just don't examine the outer upper portion of the eyelid, but you should always flip the eyelid and evaluate the tarsus. So this is a case of seborrheic keratosis. So benign lesions, if you're asked about management, it's usually, if it's smaller lesions are even observed, if at all it's causing cosmesis defect in the patient, that's when it is excised. But larger lesion like this, even if it is benign, it has to be taken out. So simple excision biopsy is the treatment of choice in benign lesions such as this, a large seborrheic keratosis which has been reconstructed. Now, in case of malignant eyelid lesion, there are set protocols which we have to follow, where we aim for a margin-free excision biopsy, and this is exactly what you do. So in your exam, they might ask you, so the first and foremost thing that you need to remember and talk is margin-free clearance in eyelid tumors. So the posterior lamella and the anterior lamella has to be taken out. And in fact, the margin control is attained by either frozen section or Mohs micrographic surgery. All right, now from the eyelid, we are going on to the conjunctiva. So now this is a case which has been diagnosed as a chronic case of blepharoconjunctivitis. We all know that blepharoconjunctivitis is usually not a unilateral disease. It's a bilateral disease. And such a severe unilateral blepharoconjunctivitis, there has to be something which is going wrong. So this is also a presentation of sebaceous gland carcinoma, which actually affects the surface, ocular surface, and this is called the intraepithelial invasion. Although the conjunctiva is definitely involved, what you see here is the meibomian gland architecture is completely destroyed with rounding of the posterior lid margin and loss of lashes. So yes, sebaceous gland carcinoma can affect the conjunctiva as well. So map biopsy is the treatment of choice to rule out what are the locations which is affected, and treatment protocol is taken accordingly. Going on to conjunctiva. So this is an HIV positive immunocompromised young patient who presented with lesion in his right eye. Well, this is a conjunctival lesion. What is very, very striking over here is the large feeder vessels. Benign lesions usually doesn't have such large feeder vessels. So whenever you see a case for your exam or in your OPD where you find these lesions with large feeder vessels, it has to be a malignant. And why? This lesion, squamous cell carcinoma, ocular surface squamous neoplasia, is the most common conjunctival neoplasia, and that's exactly why I took this case. So whenever you have a lesion, you have to take a cotton bud tip and touch it and see whether it is freely mobile, or fix it to the sclera. And if required, UBM and ASOCT is done in order to rule out scleral invasion. In fact, he had superior scleral invasion of a squamous cell carcinoma of the eye. So again, ocular surface squamous neoplasia, these are important cases. So you have to look for the presence of keratin, you have to look for the rose Bengal staining, positivity, feeder vessels, intrinsic vascularity, corneal encroachment, if at all it's present, because it usually arises from the limbus extending into the cornea and also extending into the conjunctiva. Scleral fixity again has to be looked into. So any, be it eyelid lesions or conjunctival lesions, if you are suspecting malignancy, a regional lymph node evaluation has to be done, including the preauricular lymph node, the submandibular lymph node, and the cervical lymph node. Now, going on to the management of OSSN, there is a lots of advancement. I'm not going into the detail. You need to go and read it up. So first and foremost, the newest modality of treatment is topical chemotherapy. And then comes surgical excision radiotherapy, including plug brachytherapy, and of course, targeted therapy if it is very, very advanced. In topical chemotherapy, we use interferon, and that's the primary choice. Then comes 5-FU and mitomycin C. Now, surgical excision, I'm just going to take you through this video very quickly. They might ask you in your exam, how exactly an OSSN is excised. So what is important in OSSN excision is, again, a margin clearance, something like what you saw in the eyelid. Again, in the conjunctiva, 4 millimeters we take as a margin-free margin, go all around the lesion, and even the corneal part is, superficial epithelial keratectomy is done after application of alcohol. And, then you excise it, including the tenons as well as the conjunctiva is completely excised. And this patient also had a lamellar sclerectomy, superficial sclerectomy. This is the alcohol application for the corneal component. And then the cornea is slightly rolled. We don't go 4 millimeters, we just go 2 millimeters margin in the cornea. It is rolled towards the limbus, and the entire lesion is excised. Now, what is very important after the excision is the cryotherapy. This prevents the recurrence. It reduces the recurrence without cryotherapy from 40% to 3% with cryotherapy.
All due respect, doctor, I request you to please sum up
excision
within the next 30 seconds.
And
Tanvi, we have time.
kept in place, and this is how management, surgical management is done. So conjunctival tumors again has a classification. It could be epithelial, the stromal, caruncular tumors. Metastasis can happen in the conjunctiva as well. So as you can see here, this is the spectrum of conjunctival tumors. All these things can come for you as a spot or a small case. This is a cystic lesion. This is an inclusion cyst. A typical salmon colored appearance is that of lymphoma. So whenever you see the salmon colored orangish color, think of lymphoma in your mind. Corneal OSSN can involve even the cornea. This is OSSN, very typical. This is nevus. This is a melanoma arising from a nevus. Melanoma can also affect the tarsal conjunctiva. So whenever you have a conjunctival lesion, always avoid the tarsal conjunctiva. Look at the upper tarsal conjunctiva and the lower tarsal conjunctiva. In fact, this is pigmented melanoma. Even OSSN can present as a pigmented.
We have a minute.
Benign vascular lesions can also present.
Okay.
Conjunctival melanoma, you should know about it much in detail because it involves regional metastasis in 20 to 40% of the patient, as well as systemic metastasis as high as 25%. So depending upon certain prognostic clinical features, you can actually predict the prognosis as far as mortality is concerned in conjunctival melanoma. So you should be knowing about conjunctival melanoma. Now, going on to a very funny picture over here. So there's a patient with bilateral pigmentation of the conjunctiva. Well, this is not a inflammation or a tumor or a neoplasia. This is in fact a tattoo which has been done. But these patients do land up in the Western world in the OPD, where they land up with a lesion and severe reaction with redness, where it would be a tattoo and not a conjunctival melanoma or a tumor. So going on to the next section, so this is a patient again presented with this large dilated vessels over the ocular surface. Well, it doesn't fit into any of the conjunctival lesions, but what you see here is very dilated vessel. Whenever a patient presents with dilated lesions, two things that I keep in my mind is to evaluate intraocular, including the ora serrata, the ciliary body area, and the choroid, to rule out any intraocular malignancy. Even a peripheral involvement of an intraocular tumor can cause such dilated episcleral vessels. But what if this turn out to be this patient had a proptosis along with these episcleral vessels, and it was the keratoconcavenous fistula, which flow. As a student, you need to know all the classification of vascular anomalies. We have the Barrows classification. Depending upon the hemodynamics, it is classified. And all these things you might have to go and read it up. So keratoconcavenous fistula can present as an orbital tumor or proptosis and conjunctival dilated vessels. So orbital tumors, just
I think we are encroaching on the next session. So I think there'll be never ending.
I need to stop.
I don't know if we are